had to face the fact that some of the people who hurt me, I had actually given them multiple chances to do so. And everybody knows the old saying, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. Well, I was the one that was handing out those second, third, and fourth chances. I wanted people to change so badly, but the truth is they actually have to want it for themselves. And like Maya Angelou said, when people show you who they are, believe them. And that was hard for me. That was the hardest part for me because I wanted to see the good in everybody. I had to learn another hard truth, and that was that you can't expect you from other people because everyone has their own mindset, their own experiences, and their own way of showing up. So expecting a version of myself from others only left me disappointed.
Thank you for tuning in to the Queen's Court podcast, a space curated for women by women. Here we celebrate empowerment, faith, sisterhood, and growth. So pull up a seat, settle in, and let's step into the rain room together.
Welcome back to the Queen's Court, a space curated for women by women, where faith, growth, and sisterhood come together. I'm your host, Neicey Ford, and today we're going to unpack another topic that was mentioned in the inaugural episode, which is straightening your crown. Now, when I say straighten your crown, I'm not just talking about, a fancy headpiece or your hair. I'm talking about identity, worth, alignment, resilience. The crown represents who you are in God, which is chosen, royal, set apart. I saw a post this week from Dr. Anika Taylor, who will be a guest on the show this month. But the post reminded us of what the Spirit of the Lord said, which is, do not despise the ones the world calls common. For what man calls ordinary, I call chosen. What others overlook, I polish. What others toss aside, I treasure. And just as you care for what costs little as if it costs much, so do I care for those who feel overlooked as though they were priceless jewels in my crown. When I read that, for some reason, it just reminded me that even when our crown tilts, it never loses value. Straightening my crown wasn't just about fixing something on the outside. It was about adjusting what was happening to me on the inside. It was about rediscovering who I was, standing in the authority that God gave me, and reclaiming the pieces of myself I thought I lost. Life has a way of throwing us off balance. And a lot of people like to say, like life throws curveballs, but life does. It throws us completely off balance sometimes. And I've had moments where I doubted that I could do things that I knew I was capable and qualified to do. There were moments when I questioned if I was enough, moments when I allowed insecurities and self doubt to creep in and literally take over my entire mindset. Those were the times when I would say that my crown slipped. And when I say that the crown slipped in these examples, I'm simply saying that I had a moment of weakness where I wavered in my faith or where I was feeling insecure and not standing in my own strength. I had to learn that admitting my crown tilted didn't make me a weak woman. It just made me human. And the first step to straightening it, as with anything else, was first acknowledging that it was crooked. So when I was preparing this episode and reflecting on this period in my life, I realized that there were seasons when I thought that I was trying to fix other people in relationships, right? But when I really stopped and took a moment to look at the situation, I realized that maybe it wasn't so much about fixing them as it was about fixing myself. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that I was broken, but it goes back again to the pruning season where God was just showing me that not everybody could go where he was trying to take. That meant I had to look inward and admit some hard truth. And let me be real, admitting that I wasn't perfect was tough because even though we all say I ain't perfect, in the back of our minds, we still think that we're right. At least I know that I did. Even, to the point where when I knew that I was wrong, I had this saying that I would say, and it would be, well, in my mind, and that was the way that I justified, my reason for thinking that I was right. And so I had to face the fact that some of the people who hurt me I had actually given them the opportunity to do so. I was the one that had given them the multiple chances. When when I think of, you hear the saying or know the saying, "Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice." I mean, "Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me." Well, I was the person that was given the second, the third, and the fourth chances. So I wanted people to change so badly, but the truth was that they had to want it for themselves, and unfortunately, they didn't. And like Maya Angelou says, when people show you who they are, believe them. That was the hardest part for me because I wanted to see the good in everybody, and I felt like, if God changed me or changed other people that I knew, then He could definitely change these people. But again, you have to want it for yourself. I had to learn also another hard truth is that you can't expect you from other people. Everyone has their own mindset, experiences, and the way that they show up. And I'm actually in a season where I'm learning that again, like that I can't expect me from other people because even when I'm at work, I'm expecting my peers to show up in the same way that I do. And that's not necessarily the case. So expecting a version of myself from others only left me disappointed. When I thought about or when I think about, people, I also think about the people that I put on pedestals. I had to admit that they didn't even ask to be put there. I put them there. And when they messed up, because nobody's perfect, I felt betrayed. But the truth was, I set them at a higher standard than I should have. So I stopped placing people on pedestals. I started expecting them to be exactly who they were. And when I did that, I released myself from disappointment. I was no longer trying to predict or mold, their behavior. I just watched their actions and then I responded accordingly. And it wasn't that I was expecting the worst. I was just now being realistic and saying, okay, I'm going to take you at your actions and not my assumptions. And maybe the one who needed the most change was me. And that change had to start internally. I had to admit that I needed help, and I did. I needed a lot of help, but I didn't just need help from like my girlfriends or my good guy friends or pastors that I knew. I needed actual help, and I needed that help from God. I didn't just want to quote scripture. I wanted to live it. I wanted to be the testimony that says, yep, I read it, I applied it, and this is how it changed me. And listen, I'm not saying that I'm perfect. I am not saying that I can quote every scripture in the Bible. I am not saying that I live my life like in a straight line according to the Bible. Like I am still a work in progress. But I am saying that I am trying and every day I strive to be a better version of myself than I was the day before. So I still have work to do. So I don't want you to think, that I consider myself as perfect or, that I'm flawless because I am not. But anyways, so I went through a season of isolation during the time of straightening my crown. I stepped back from people. I stepped back really from the noise and the distraction because, it was a lot going on in that period for me. And at first, like I mentioned in the pruning season, I felt lonely, but over time I did realize that I wasn't alone at all because even in the silence, God was still there with me. That's when I committed to the 31 days of journaling. And as I told you before, it was something real practical. I just got this pink binder, printed out a picture of Rihanna where she was holding the crown, on her head. I slid it in the front sleeve and I began the journaling, but I chose that picture, one, because of the way that she was holding the crown, but also because to me, she looked strong. She looked confident and so unbothered. And so that's what I needed to see. So for the 31 days, I journaled, I studied, I prayed, and I wrote, all of this in that binder. It was like my pre work or my crown work, as I would call it. So each day I picked up my pen, I poured my heart out every day. I wrote prayers, I wrote questions, I wrote confessions, I wrote poetry. So it was me reclaiming my identity and not necessarily out loud, but just on paper. I remembered who I was in Christ and reminded myself of the authority again that he had gave me to stand strong even when I felt weak. I also paired the journaling with a fast. And let me be real, straightening my crown also meant cutting off toxic relationships, right? Or at least I thought I did. Now, for me, this was a dysfunctional period, I tell you. I kid you not, so dysfunctional. But I left I left the door I left the door cracked. I left the door cracked, I left the window cracked. I didn't block the calls, I ain't blocked the texts. And deep down, when I thought about it, I was like, why didn't I do that? And I know. But deep down, I wanted to know that I was still wanted. And I know it sounds dysfunctional, might even sound toxic to you. And I'm sure none of you listening have ever done anything like that. But, I didn't. I didn't block nothing. And the reason again why was because I wanted to still feel wanted. But here's the truth. Um, Sometimes being wanted doesn't mean being valued. Sometimes it's just convenience. And so leaving the door open and the window cracked was an invitation for the same cycles of BS, the same cycle of hurt, the same cycle of dysfunction, the same cycle of infidelity, all of that stuff. Like that's what leaving the door open was. It was just an invitation to invite all the same mess that I was trying to remove myself from. So straightening my crown meant reminding myself that I was worth more than crumbs of attention. I had to fully block out what was trying to pull me back. And when I did, when I stopped answering the calls, when I started deleting the text messages, when I would let them, the calls go to voicemail, that little thrill of being wanted faded away. And the desire eventually left as well. Releasing them completely became easier, and that was me taking my crown back from the hands that didn't deserve to touch it in the first place. Um, but here's another twist. I was expecting something major to happen at the end of the 31 days. So I was looking for a breakthrough. I was looking for a miracle. And my friend even told me that the real test came after the fast. So when the 31 days ended, I waited, and waited, but nothing big happened. Or so I thought, right? Looking back, something did happen because my desire shifted. I found myself deeply desiring a relationship. And when I told my girlfriend about it, I told her, I was like, girl, yeah, like I want to be in a relationship. So I'm praying for someone, that God sends me somebody that I can, like that can be in my life. And she said, no, hold on. Maybe that's the problem. She said, you out here just praying for anybody and you've got to be specific. And maybe that's why the wrong people keep showing up. And me being me, I'm thinking, okay, so how specific do I have to be? Do I need to say, Lord, make him, 6'2", brown skin, you green at like, what do I need to do? And so in doing that, like when she said it, I didn't pray for those specifics because I'm like, all right, like that can still be anybody. So there was a person that I had in mind, and I began to pray for this person by name. And when I say name, I mean they whole government name. I had first, middle, last. So I'm praying for them specifically. Uh, Here's the other thing, because what I learned during that season is the truth about be careful what you pray for because I prayed so hard that I felt like one of those kids, it was one of the moments where the kids be like, Mama, please, please, Mama, can I please, please, Mama? And finally, out of sheer exhaustion, the mama's like, oh my goodness, like go ahead. Like that's what I felt like God was saying to me. Like, girl, this is not for you. Like this is not what I have for you. But since you want it so bad and you won't leave me alone about it, here, go ahead. Have fun. Tell me when it's over. And here's where it got real because for me, my crown wasn't even fully adjusted. Like it was just partly adjusted. And the relationship that I was praying for wasn't in alignment with what God had for me. But he gave it to me anyway because he to me it was like he was trying to teach me discernment. And when the relationship didn't work, because it didn't, I was right back at his feet asking, I'm like, God, why? And that's when I realized his no wasn't rejection, like it was for my protection. And baby, listen, can you say a lesson learned? Ooh wee, you know. So I don't do that no more. Um, but that season taught me a hard truth. Sometimes we're asking God to remove toxic people in one breath, and then we're begging Him to bless something unhealthy in the next. So, straightening my crown meant learning discernment, not just saying no to what was clearly toxic, but also trusting God enough to wait for what was truly aligned with His plan. I thought about the saying, "You want to make God laugh, tell him your plans." And I'm sure he was up there looking down with popcorn and Pepsi, like, "Girl, I tried to tell you," because that right there was something else. Um, everything that everything that we desire isn't always what we're destined for, and everything that we think we want may not be what we actually need. And that was something else. That was a lesson learned too during that season. Because yes, ooh, I'm so thankful for God. uh, straightening my crown wasn't just about blocking numbers or setting boundaries. It was truly about aligning my prayers with God's will and trusting His wisdom. Sometimes our crown slips and it's because of people. But a lot of the times when it slips, it's because of our own choices. But the beauty in that is that when we put forth the effort to adjust it, we become more grounded in who we really are. So I'm thankful for, the things that God said no to because they protected me just as much as his yeses did. And at the end of the day, straightening my crown is about alignment, discernment, and walking in the authority again that he's already given to me. Crowns aren't just about us individually though. They're about us collectively. And as women, we have the responsibility to support each other. I love the saying, fix her crown without telling the world that it's crooked because that's real sisterhood. It means that I'm covering you instead of exposing you, that I'm protecting you instead of criticizing you, that I'm lifting you up instead of tearing you down. And maybe like a month or so ago, I remember seeing on social media where one of my favorite singers, I mean, she was going off on someone who who was tearing her down by body shaming and talking about her clothes and her appearance. I mean, the whole nine. And it just really hurt my feelings. And I truly hope that one day we can get to normalizing one, not tearing each other down because again, we come against enough in the world, us tearing each other down, is not helping. So I hope we can get to a point where we no longer do that as women and we normalize, if it is something wrong that needs adjusting, then we normalize quietly adjusting another woman's crown when they don't realize that it's slipping, right? So I've been blessed to have women in my life who've done that for me. And I've also had the privilege of being on the other side of doing the same, thing for other women. And that's the beauty in sisterhood. So remember I told you guys about the story of how the concept of straightening my crown and the Queen's Court was even birthed. And that was from the lady who came out of the restroom with her shirt tucked inside her tights. Now, that was a great example of me affixing a sister's crown without telling the world that it was crooked. Some women ask, well, what does fixing another woman's crown even look like? It looks like, when you see her struggling, you pull her aside to build her up instead of pointing out her flaws to tear her down. It looks like speaking life over her instead of criticizing her. Sometimes it's covering her in prayer because the most powerful way to fix um, a crown can be interceding for her when she doesn't even know it, and sometimes it's just leading by example and showing her that in this particular situation, like I overcame it. And so I feel like you can do the same too. Fixing crowns is it's about lifting, covering, and empowering in a way that preserves dignity. But here's the thing, straightening your own crown is just as important. And that's the moment when you remind yourself of your own worth, when you refuse to let people, situations, or even life make you forget who you are. So, because when you know how to straighten your own crown, you're better equipped to help another woman with hers, right? So, the crown represents strength, dignity, confidence, self worth, resilience, a whole bunch of other things. But it is, at the end of the day, a reminder that no matter how hard life is lifing, we have the power to readjust and keep it moving. Straightening my crown in my season, it wasn't about perfection, it was about alignment. It was about standing tall in who God created me to be, even when my heart wanted something else. It was about trusting my worth, my purpose, and my crown was never defined by a relationship, but by the one who gave me the authority in the first place. So, sis, if you're in a season of straightening your crown, don't rush the process. Don't settle for what looks good but isn't God. Trust Him, wait on Him, and remember, your crown is already yours. Straighten it, adjust it, and walk in it. Thank you for sitting in the rain room with me today. If this episode blessed you, be sure to subscribe, share, and leave a review so other women can find encouragement too. And remember, no matter how tilted your crown may feel right now, it's still yours because you're still His.
Thank you for joining us in the Queen's Court today. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and download so you never miss an episode. Until next time, keep reigning with purpose and walking in power.